On a glowing planet named Velthara, known for its beauty and royal bloodlines, sat a palace of crystal towers and silver walls. Inside this palace, hidden deep behind golden doors, lived a girl who once had the stars at her feet, but now lived in silence. She was the youngest daughter of the royal family, the Princess Alira, born blind. Her eyes shimmered like moonlight, but could not see. Later, after an accident no one ever explained, her legs stopped working too. She couldn't walk, couldn't fight. And in the eyes of her proud alien people, she was useless, so they hid her. She wasn't allowed to attend royal events, or even sit near the throne. She was locked in a room decorated like a dollhouse, with golden chairs she couldn't sit on and mirrors she couldn't use. Servants were instructed not to talk to her unless she asked first. And no one ever visited unless it was to feed her or dress her in clothes she never chose. The only sound that filled her room was the soft hum of the glowing walls and her own quiet breathing. Years passed. Then came the bonding ceremony, a day when royal children were offered for mental and emotional connection, a tradition where potential suitors would come and try to bond with the royals, sharing mind and soul energy to create future leaders and protectors of the galaxy. Alira was added to the list only as a joke. Put her in the chamber, her oldest brother smirked. Let's see if anyone's desperate enough to choose her. The other siblings, tall, powerful, and shining in battle armor, stood proudly before a line of aliens, warriors, nobles, and leaders, all of them looking for the perfect royal partner. But when it came to Alira, they looked at her once and looked away fast. Some laughed quietly. Others whispered insults. A few shook their heads like she was something broken on display. Alira sat still, dressed in flowing silver robes that covered her paralyzed legs. Her white blind eyes faced forward, her hands resting quietly on her lap. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. She was used to being invisible. Then the hall went silent. Footsteps echoed, slow and heavy, not like the clicking of alien boots, but rough human steps. Worn from long travels, he wasn't glowing or dressed in gold. His armor was dusty, his beard a little uneven. His name was Jack Carter, a human mercenary who fought in the Outer Ring Wars. No one knew why he came to a bonding event meant for the royal elite. But he was there, looking straight at the girl no one else wanted. He stopped in front of her. She's blind, a noble muttered behind him. She can't even walk, said another. She's a waste, someone spat. Jack didn't blink. Instead, he knelt right in front of Alira and said softly, "Can you hear me?" Alira turned her head just slightly, surprised. Her voice was gentle but sharp. "I can hear you better than they ever did." The room went quiet again. Jack smiled. "Good, because I didn't come to bond with perfect princes and proud warriors." He said, "I came looking for someone real." Alira's lips trembled. Not from fear, but from something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. One of the guards stepped forward. "You are not allowed to speak to her without permission from the royal council." But Jack didn't move. He kept his eyes on the princess. "You want me to ask permission to talk to someone they locked in silence?" he asked. "I'll pass." Whispers filled the hall. "Is this human mad? Why her? He's throwing away his future." But Alira was no longer listening to them. Her pale fingers reached out slowly, as if unsure. Her hand hovered in the air, blind to where he truly was. Jack reached up and took her hand. The entire room froze at that moment. The bonding device behind them, an ancient machine used to scan emotional and neural connection, lit up without even being activated. A spark danced between their minds, clear, warm, powerful. Even Alira gasped. She felt something for the first time in years, a heartbeat, not her own, in sync with hers. Not pity, not duty, but connection, real, honest connection from the shadows. One of the royal advisors whispered in fear, "The human. He's bonding with her," and for the first time since she lost her sight and legs. Alira smiled, not because someone chose her, but because someone finally saw her, even if she couldn't see him back. *, the palace halls were still buzzing after What had happened? No one had expected the ancient bonding device to react not to her. The blind and disabled princes, and definitely not with a human, a species the royal court barely respected. But Jack Carter didn't care about their rules, or their shocked whispers. He had seen more in Elira's silence than in all the loud titles thrown around that room. While others walked away with pride and power, Jack stayed behind, sitting on the cold floor of the bonding chamber, just next to Elira. No throne, no armor, no guards, just a man and a girl who had been left behind for too long. "Do they always treat you like this?" Jack asked, his voice calm, low, but firm. Elira didn't answer at first. She was still holding his hand gently, as if afraid it would vanish like a dream. Finally, she said softly, "They call it mercy. Keeping me hidden so I don't embarrass the Empire." Jack's jaw tightened. "Mercy, huh?" he muttered. "Funny how mercy always feels like a cage." Elira gave a small smile, something rare on her pale face. "You're not like them," she said. "No," Jack replied, "I'm not." Later that night, in a quiet courtyard outside the princess's private wing, Jack sat on the stone floor, sharpening a piece of metal with a tiny blade. Elira was nearby, sitting on a smooth hover chair, the moonlight touching her skin like silver rain. "Why did you come here?" she asked, her voice curious but cautious. "This bonding event. It's not made for someone like you." Jack paused, looking up at the stars. "I've seen too many fake people," he said. "Always shining, always pretending. I got tired of noise." He looked at her gently. "But then I heard your silence, and it spoke louder than all their voices." Elira's breath caught in her throat. No one had ever said something like that to her before. Not her parents, not her siblings, not even her caretakers. Her eyes may have been blind, but she saw something in Jack that felt more real than anything she'd known. But not everyone was pleased with the human's interest. In a tall tower above, Prince Kalar, Elira's older brother, and next in line to the throne, watched the scene unfold through a hologram screen. His face was sharp, proud, and full of anger. "This is an embarrassment," he hissed. "A human bonding with her, that useless blind creature." Beside him, the High Advisor nodded carefully. "Shall I interfere?" he asked. Keller's lips curled. "Yes, but make it quiet," he said. "We can't have the people thinking she's worth anything." The next morning, Jack found Elira's chamber door locked. Guards stood outside with their weapons ready. Their faces were blank, but their message was clear. "You're not welcome anymore." Jack raised an eyebrow. "Is this how you treat someone who holds hands now?" "Orders from the prince," one guard replied. Jack didn't move. "Then go tell your prince I don't answer to him," without warning. The guards raised their pulse spears, but Jack was faster. In one smooth motion, he knocked both weapons aside and had them pinned in seconds. "I fought beasts 10 times your size," he growled. "Don't test me over a door." From inside, Elira heard the noise and called out, "Jack, are you there?" He replied, softer now, "I'm here, Princess. They just didn't want me to be." The door slid open as Elira forced the override with her voice ID. Jack stepped inside, looking at her pale face filled with worry. "They tried to keep you out," she said. "They'll try harder next time," Jack answered. "But they'll have to do more than lock a door." Elira's fingers shook as she held his arm. "You don't understand. You're putting yourself in danger," Jack smiled. "And you don't understand. I've already been in worse. Trust me. Sticking with you is less dangerous than sticking with myself." For the first time, Elira laughed, soft and beautiful, like the song of wind chimes. It echoed in the cold walls of her room like warmth returning to winter. Jack leaned closer and whispered, "If they think I'll leave just because you're blind or can't walk, they've never met a real human." And from the shadows of the palace walls, hidden eyes watched them closely, because the girl who was once forgotten had just been seen by the wrong kind of power. For days, Jack stayed by Elira's side, He told her stories of Earth, of oceans, birds, and blue skies she had never seen. She smiled when he described the smell of rain or the sound of wind through trees. It was a world far from hers, a world without walls, without titles, without expectations. But something still bothered him. One night, while Alira rested in her chair, her fingers curled loosely around his sleeve, Jack noticed a dim blue light pulsing beneath the skin of her wrist. It glowed faintly, just once, then faded. He leaned in slowly, careful not to wake her. He brushed back the soft sleeve of her robe, and there it was again. A strange mark barely visible to the eye, but glowing under his scanner lens. It wasn't natural. It looked like tech, old alien tech, fused directly with her nerves. What the hell? Jack whispered. It wasn't just a scar. It was a connection port, something used to install control systems in machines or slaves. His chest tightened. Was this how she lost her legs? Were they taken from her? Modified? Controlled? Alira stirred, her voice groggy. Jack? He quickly lowered her sleeve and smiled. I'm here. She relaxed again, her breath soft, trusting him completely. But now Jack couldn't sleep. The next day, while Alira was taken for her scheduled healing session, something she hated, Jack snuck away. He moved like a shadow through the palace halls, his steps silent, his breath low. He found the royal archives locked behind layers of security. But locks had never stopped him before, using his old war tools. Jack sliced through the security panel and slid inside, glowing files blinking in the dark room like stars. He searched for her name, Alira Veltharan, Princess of the Eighth Bloodline. What he found made his blood run cold. Project Eclipse, biotech experiment. Subject, Alira Veltharan. Status, unfit for leadership. Controlled regression success, visual and motor. Functions disabled. His fingers trembled as he read the truth. The princess was not born disabled. She had been chosen by the Empire's scientists to be an example, a sacrifice. Why? Because she asked questions. Because she refused the royal matchmakers. Because she wanted to study philosophy and healing instead of politics and war. They punished her curiosity by implanting tech inside her, shutting down her body piece by piece, not to kill her, but to keep her alive and quiet, forever. Jack clenched his fists. Monsters. He growled. He downloaded the files onto a hidden chip and erased all traces of entry before slipping out. The hallway outside felt colder than before. Darker, heavier. As he reached Alira's room, she was just returning in her hover chair. Her face pale, tired, bruised from another painful healing session that did nothing but drain her energy. Jack knelt in front of her, holding her hands. I found something, he whispered, and you need to hear it. He told her everything, in simple words, in careful truth. At first, she said nothing. Her blind eyes stared forward, her lips trembling slightly. Then a tear rolled down her cheek, quiet and heavy. They did this to me? She whispered. Yes, Jack said gently. And I'm sorry. Alira's voice shook. I thought maybe I was just weak. That maybe I deserved this. Jack shook his head. Never say that. They feared your mind, so they tried to break your body. She wiped her face slowly. Then let them fear me again, she whispered. Jack leaned closer. I've seen tech like this before. If we can unlock the control, your body might still respond. You might walk again? She asked, breathless. Maybe, Jack said. But we'll need help, and they'll try to stop us. That night, as the palace slept, Jack and Alira made a plan. He would reach out to an old friend, an alien engineer named Reth, a half-cyber exile who owed Jack his life. Reth had worked on similar tech before. He could help remove or override the implants, but there was risk. If the royal family found out they were tampering with the implants, they wouldn't just exile Jack, they'd kill him and silence Alira forever. Still, Alira nodded, her voice stronger than before. I've spent enough years being quiet, she said. Now it's time I speak with my actions. She reached out, finding his hand, squeezing it tightly. "Thank you for seeing me, Jack," she whispered. He smiled. "Thank you for trusting me." Outside the door, unseen and hidden, a silent drone hovered in the air, recording every word, every whisper, and miles away. In the dark chambers of Prince Keller, the red alert flashed on his screen. "They know," he muttered coldly. "Then it's time we remind them who rules this empire." The next morning, the palace was unusually quiet. A strange tension filled the air like the calm before a storm. The sky above Velthara turned a pale silver, as if the world itself sensed something was about to happen. A royal messenger arrived at Alira's chamber with a scroll sealed in black wax. Jack opened it and frowned. Alira, sitting in her hover chair beside him, tilted her head. "What is it?" His voice was low. "It's a summons from Prince Keller. He's invoking an ancient rite, the trial of bonding." Alira's fingers tightened around the arms of her chair. Her voice turned cold. "No one has dared invoke that trial in centuries." Jack nodded slowly. "And now they want me to take it, or lose my right to bond with you." The trial of bonding wasn't just a test, it was a trap. A series of deadly challenges designed to prove a suitor's worth. But secretly, it was often used to eliminate unwanted candidates, especially those who embarrassed the royal family. "They want you to fail," Alira whispered. Jack smiled. "Good. That means they're scared." The arena was ancient, carved into the rock beneath the palace itself. The walls glowed faintly, marked with the blood of past warriors. Thousands of aliens filled the upper seats, nobles and warriors from every corner of the galaxy, their eyes sharp, their minds cruel. Jack stepped into the center alone, wearing light armor, a sword on his back, no helmet, no shield, just a human surrounded by enemies. High above on a crystal balcony stood Prince Keller, dressed in silver and violet robes. His voice echoed through the arena. "Human Jack Carter, you are hereby challenged under the rite of Veltharan. Should you survive all 3 phases of the trial, your bond with the royal bloodline will be honored." He smiled coldly. "But if you fail, your ashes will be scattered with respect." The crowd laughed, a cruel, sharp sound. But Alira, hidden behind one of the viewing screens, wasn't laughing. Her heart pounded. Her lips moved silently, whispering his name. "Jack." Phase 1. The beast. A thick gate opened, and a monstrous creature stepped out 10 feet tall, with burning red eyes and thick armored scales. Its roar shook the walls. It was called a Vernax. Bred for war and blood, Jack didn't flinch. He stood still, waited. Then when the Vernax charged, he rolled to the side, cutting at its leg. Again, slicing until it stumbled, bleeding. The crowd was silent now, shocked. Then the beast fell with a cry, and Jack stood over it, breathless but alive. Phase 1 complete. Phase 2. The mind maze. Jack was taken into a dark chamber, where walls moved, floors shifted, and strange lights played tricks on his vision. The test was simple: find the way out in time. But the maze was built by telepaths, and it played with memory and emotion. He saw flashes of Earth, his home, his mother's smile, his dead commander from the war. A voice whispered, "Go back. You don't belong here. She's just an alien." But Jack closed his eyes and thought of Alira's voice. "I can hear you better than they ever did." He kept walking, fighting the illusions, step by step, until he broke through the maze's heart, covered in sweat but undefeated. Phase 2. Complete. Phase 3. The Firewalk. The final challenge. Jack was led to a long path surrounded by fire and plasma jets. The platform would collapse in under 1 minute. The only way through was to run, jump, and dodge with no protection. One wrong step and he would burn. The crowd roared now, cheering for his death, betting credits on when he would fall. But Alira leaned forward behind the screen, whispering, "Come back to me, Jack. You promised." Jack stared at the path, counted in his head, then ran. Flames leapt around him, heat blasting his skin. He jumped once, twice, rolled, ducked. His boot caught fire, but he didn't stop. His chest burned, his eyes blurred, and then he leaped. onto the final stone, collapsing on his knees as the rest of the path crumbled behind him. Phase 3. Complete. The arena was silent, completely still. Even the nobles didn't know what to say. Prince Keller gritted his teeth, his voice cold. Human Jack Carter, you have passed the trial. From the shadows, Alira entered the arena slowly, helped by her chair and the servant who had always stayed loyal to her. The moment Jack saw her, he tried to rise, but his legs shook from exhaustion. She moved to him, leaned forward, and whispered, "You didn't have to do this to prove anything." Jack smiled through the pain. "Didn't do it to prove I'm strong. I did it to prove you're worth fighting for." A tear rolled down her pale cheek. Above them, the crowd, touched by the scene, began to stand in silence, confused, unsure whether to cheer or bow. But one thing was clear: the human had passed. Not just the trial, but the hearts of the people. And now Keller had a bigger problem, because the princess no one wanted had just become the one everyone would follow. The trial of bonding had ended, but its effects were only just beginning. The human, Jack Carter, had survived what no outsider was meant to survive. The blind and paralyzed alien princess Alira had not only bonded with him, but stepped into public view, something the royal family had worked hard to prevent for years. And the people noticed. For the first time in decades, the crowd didn't whisper insults about her. They whispered curiosity. She spoke. She moved. She smiled. Behind palace doors, Keller raged in silence. His grip on power, once unshakable, had started to crack. "She should not be alive," he muttered. His advisor bowed low. "And yet the people, they are beginning to like her." Keller's eyes darkened. "Then we must act before they start to follow her." That evening, back in the quiet of her chamber, Alira sat near the window. Her white blind eyes turned toward the glowing moons above. Jack sat beside her, still bandaged from the trial, one arm in a sling, bruises across his back, but smiling. "You almost died," she whispered. Jack chuckled. "You think I didn't notice?" She reached out, her fingers brushing against his. Why would you risk your life for me?" He turned to her, serious now. "Because when I first saw you, really saw you, you were sitting in a cage, locked by fear, not by chains. I've seen war, Alira. I've seen broken people, but I've never seen someone locked away for being too bright." Her lips trembled, but she smiled. "You make me sound more powerful than I feel." Jack leaned in closer. "You are. You just don't remember it yet." Later that night, Jack pulled out the device Reth, his engineer friend, had delivered in secret, a neural resonance scanner. "It won't hurt," he told her. "Just want to see something." Alira nodded, and he placed the scanner at the back of her neck, near where he had once seen the implant pulse. The screen lit up. Jack's eyes widened. There it was, a complete neural suppression system, not only disabling her legs, but also muting certain brain connections, limiting her memory, her energy, even her confidence. "This thing, it's been controlling you," he whispered. Alira tilted her head. "I always felt like my thoughts were slower, like I was walking in fog." Jack replied, "That's because someone put the fog there." He ran a small override code Reth had written for him, and slowly, carefully, the suppression faded. The screen blinked, and Alira gasped sharply, her body jolting like electricity had touched her soul. "Are you okay?" Jack asked quickly. She didn't answer. Her breath was shallow, her hands shook. Then her head rose slowly, and her voice clearer than ever said, "I remember now." She stood, not walked, not ran, but stood without the hover chair, without support. Her legs shook, weak from years of disuse. But they held her. Jack stared, stunned, his heart pounding in his chest. "By the stars," he whispered. Alira reached for the wall, touched it, then stepped forward 1 foot, then the other, slow but steady. "I used to dance," she whispered, "before they took it all away." Tears fell freely, now not from pain, but from clarity, from freedom. Jack walked to her, helped her sit again, and said softly, They tried to erase you, but your vision was never lost. It was just hidden. In the days that followed, Alira began to change. Her voice grew stronger, her steps steadier. With Jack's help, she practiced walking daily, and with each step, her confidence returned. The people noticed. Servants began whispering about the miracle. Young aliens began leaving notes outside her door. Messages like, "You give me hope, and if you can rise, maybe I can too." Even nobles who once ignored her now looked twice when her name was spoken. But Keller saw the change, and he feared it. He ordered spies to monitor her chamber, blocked palace healers from assisting her, and threatened those who showed support. But it was too late. The princess who had once sat in silence had found her voice, and the galaxy had begun to listen. One night, Jack placed a small gift on her table, an old Earth music device. "I loaded it with piano music," he said. "You can't see it, but you can feel it." She placed the earbuds in, pressed play. Soft notes filled her ears, and she wept not because she was sad, but because for the first time, she could feel beauty again. Jack sat beside her, saying nothing, and in the silence between songs, she whispered, "Jack, do you think I'll ever be queen?" He turned to her and said, "No. I think you'll be more than a queen. You'll be a light this empire has never seen." Alira's quiet return to strength did not remain quiet for long. The palace walls, once used to hiding her, now echoed with her soft footsteps. Her calm voice began to appear in council meetings, not as a demand, but as a presence, and the people. The people were beginning to choose her, not with shouts or flags, but with respectful silence when she passed. But in the heart of the royal tower, her brother Keller watched with burning rage. "She was meant to be forgotten," he growled, slamming his fist into the glass table. His advisor tried to calm him. "Your Highness, she hasn't made any direct threats." Keller turned, eyes full of fury. "She doesn't need to. She is existing, and that's threat enough." That evening, Alira sat with Jack near the garden, a quiet place hidden by floating trees and glowing plants. Jack was building something, a small drone with long-range communication abilities. "You're planning something," Alira said softly. Jack nodded. "Your story needs to be told, not whispered, not twisted, but shown to the whole empire." She tilted her head. "A broadcast?" "Yes," Jack replied. "The truth about what they did to you, about your implants, about the suppression tech. I'll send it straight to the outer colonies and neutral worlds." Alira breathed in deeply. "It will start a storm." Jack looked into her pale eyes. "Good. Storms clear the sky." But before they could begin, Keller struck first. That night, under the cover of moonlight, a group of masked guards stormed Alira's chamber. They moved silently, quickly, without honor. Jack barely had time to react. He shoved Alira behind the dresser and blocked the first stun blast with his shoulder. Pain tore through him, but he stood. "You'll have to go through me," he growled, pulling out a small plasma dagger. The guards did not speak. They were not here to arrest. They were here to erase. Alira tried to reach him, but another guard fired a stun pulse at her legs. She cried out and collapsed. Jack roared, slashing at the attackers, knocking one to the floor. But a second blast hit his back, and he dropped to his knees. Through the haze of pain, he saw Alira crawling toward him, eyes wide with fear. "No," she whispered, "not again." "I won't lose another." But something inside her shifted as the guards approached, ready to take them both. Alira screamed, not in fear, but in power. Her skin began to glow faintly. The old implants, long silent, began to spark, not with suppression, but with awakening. Her voice rang out like a bell. "Get a WAY from him." A shockwave burst from her chest, knocking the attackers off their feet. The windows shattered, and light from the walls surged around her body. Her legs moved not perfectly, not fully, but they moved. She stood wobbling, fists clenched. "I am not your prisoner," she said. "Not anymore." The guards ran, afraid of the force they had awakened. Moments later, the loyal servant girl, Lyra, burst into the room, eyes wide. "My lady!" she cried, helping Alira and Jack up. "They tried to kill us," Jack groaned. Alira nodded, her voice calm but cold. "It was Keller. I don't need proof. He's the only one with the power and fear to do it," Lyra whispered. "Then you must leave. Both of you. Before sunrise." Alira looked down at Jack, his face bruised, breathing hard. "But we don't have a ship," she said. Lyra's eyes flashed. "Then take mine. I've hidden one beneath the garden since my brother tried to." "Sell me to Keller's cousin," Jack chuckled weakly. "Remind me never to underestimate palace servants again." As the sun rose over Valthara, a small hidden ship shot silently from the underground tunnel. Leaving the palace and the planet behind, Alira stood beside Jack in the cockpit, her hand resting gently on his chest as he leaned back. Injured but awake, she looked out the window, her voice steady. "They tried to kill us. My own blood." Jack replied, "Then maybe it's time you become something greater than blood." She looked at him, puzzled. "A queen?" He shook his head. "No. A symbol, not for fear or tradition, but for change. Across the stars." Jack's transmission was sent. Reth activated the broadcast from a safe relay satellite, and soon, holograms across cities and ships began playing the message. Images of the princess, locked in a golden cage. Footage of the implants, the cruel files marked Project Eclipsa. And finally, Lyra's voice, clear and strong. "I was born to lead, but they made me believe I was meant to sit quietly and fade. Now I rise, not for revenge, but for truth, and I ask, how many more have they broken? If I am a traitor for speaking, then let my voice echo through every colony, in the royal tower." Keller's face turned pale as the images played before his council. One elder whispered, "We believed you. But now we see the truth." Keller slammed his fist again. Then, "We end this the old way. Prepare the fleet. Burn her out of the stars." But his own power was slipping, because now the Empire was listening to her, not to him. The stars above Valthara burned brighter than ever, but change was already sweeping across the Empire like wildfire. Alira's broadcast had reached every corner: mining colonies, trade ships, border worlds, even deep space outposts. People who had never heard her name were now whispering it with awe and hope. Some called her the Silent Flame, others, the broken heir who stood. But one word spread louder than all the rest. Queen. Aboard a stolen diplomatic cruiser, Alira stood on the command deck, no longer in robes of silk, but in armor-light silver plating across her chest and shoulders. Engraved with ancient symbols of truth and strength, her long white hair flowed behind her like a banner, her eyes still blind, yet now sharper than any sight. Jack, his wounds nearly healed, stood beside her, adjusting a small weapon holster. On his hip, "Your message worked," he said, looking at the holographic map, glowing with support signals from across the stars. "The people are rising." "For you," Alira shook her head. "Not for me, for themselves. I just reminded them they have a voice." But even as support grew, danger moved faster. Keller had deployed Royal Guard ships across key routes. His command fleet, known as the Iron Veil, was en route to intercept them before they could reach the capital moon. "Let her speak," he told his commanders. "But silence her before she ever lands, no mercy." His voice echoed like poison through the cold halls of the throne tower. "She wants a throne? Then let her die chasing it." As the stars spun into alignment, Alira and Jack reached the capital moon, Theraxis. Thousands of ships orbited it, including many civilian vessels bearing her crest, a glowing flame behind a rising crown. But the moment they entered orbit, alarms rang across their ship. Multiple hostiles approaching. Reth's voice crackled through the comms. "It's them, Keller's elite guard." Jack turned to Alira. "We can't outrun them." She didn't flinch. "Then we don't run." The plan was dangerous, almost impossible. They would land in the old arena, the same place where Jack had survived the bonding trials. It was ancient, exposed, and risky, but it was symbolic, and most importantly, it was public. If Keller attacked there, the entire empire would see it unfold live. No edits, no lies. As their ship descended, the arena filled with 1,000 citizens, soldiers, defected nobles, and curious onlookers. They came not for a fight, but for a voice, for a leader. And when Alira stepped onto the stage, standing tall, without a chair, the crowd went silent, not out of fear, but respect. She raised one hand, and her voice echoed across the stone floor and through every screen broadcasting across the galaxy. "I was born a princess," she began, "but raised like a shadow. They told me I was weak because I could not see, that I was broken, because I could not walk. They put machines inside me not to heal, but to control." Murmurs filled the crowd. Eyes wide, fists clenched. "But I survived," she continued. "Not because of royalty, not because of power, but because one human held my hand when no one else would." She turned to Jack, who stood quietly beside her, his gaze strong and proud. That moment changed everything, because in that moment, I remembered who I was, not a mistake, not a burden, but a voice that matters. The crowd roared, but Keller wasn't done yet. Above the arena, ships broke through the clouds, iron veil cruisers ready to strike. The crowd looked up in fear as cannons lit up, ready to fire. Then a miracle. Dozens of rogue ships entered orbit, painted with the flame and crown crest, blocking the shots. Among them were former guards, rogue pilots, even alien mercenaries who had once served the crown. Keller's fleet was outnumbered not in firepower, but in will. His commanders refused to fire. "This is madness," one whispered. "No," said another. "This is truth." Back in the arena, Alira stood taller. "I am not here to destroy the crown," she said. "I am here to fix it. With every scar I carry, I bring understanding. With every lie they told, I bring truth." She pulled out the ancient symbol of bonding, once used in the trials, and held it up. "I claim the right they tried to erase. I claim my name, my voice, my place, not as a silent princess, but as the bonded queen." The arena erupted in cheers. The galaxy, watching from a million screens, began to chant her name. "Alira! Alira! Alira!" Prince Keller, watching from his throne room, sat in stunned silence as report after report flooded in. "All systems turning against us. Troops surrendering. Your rule is over." And for the first time, the proud prince felt fear, not from weapons, but from words, from the power of a truth he could no longer bury. Days later, peace spread like light through the cracks of old walls. The empire did not collapse, it transformed, with Alira at the center, not ruling with fear, but with understanding. She built schools, restored old colonies, and opened councils to alien voices once ignored. And at her side, always, stood Jack, not as a bodyguard, not as a hero, but as her bonded equal, the human who saw a broken girl in chains and instead helped her rise to become a queen.